Oh boy, here we go again with a Debunking Araki Forgot video. Let's get to it. I've reacted to a lot of Hamon beat videos, as you can see. If you want to check them out, do it. If you don't, well, kiss my ass. I don't know, dude. Oh boy, it's been a hot minute since we've done one of these. This better be good info. All right. Okay, here we go.
Welcome back to Debunking Araki
Hi.
Forgot. Just like with last time, I've compiled a list of questions that I missed in my debunking series so far, as well as previous topics that I think need additional explanation.
Oh god, can't wait to see low IQ JoJo questions.
I'll be going over topics I missed from parts 1 to 7 of JoJo, as well as spin-offs like Thus Spoke Shibe Rohan. I feel the need to bring this up since anytime I try to ask for topics for another extras video, a lot of the replies are things already covered in a previous video. So if you want to suggest a new topic for a video, please check the Debunking Araki Forgot playlist to see if it's already
You know
covered.
they won't do that.
The first question has to do with the limitations of Hamon. Back in part 1, Straizo mentioned that in order to channel Hamon through metal, you need to have sustained contact with it. Some have said that this is contradicted by various moments throughout parts 1 and 2. So I'll go over a few of these here.
Oh boy.
First, some people seem to just completely misunderstand Straizo's explanation and think that no metal can conduct Hamon. They point to Jonathan using the sword Pluck as something that is contradictory. What? This is of course ignoring that Straizo himself conducts Hamon through metal and explains how it works in the very scene where this is talked about.
Why did you even include that? You're just...
Some point to ranged attacks like Zeppeli's Hamon Cutter, Caesar's Bubbles, and Joseph's Thrown Clackers. I'll go over these one at a time. Zeppeli's Hamon Cutter is made of wine, an organic material. Caesar's Bubbles are made from soap, and soap is created using fats and oils, yet another organic material. As for Joseph's Clackers, he himself brings up that he coats his weapons in oil, which is why they retain Hamon even after he loses contact with them. In my previous extras video, I answered a question asking why Kars' vampire army in part 2 weren't using the full extent of their vampire abilities like Dio does. However, I got some comments trying to correct me by saying these aren't actually vampires, but really zombies like the ones seen in part 1. This is incorrect. It was clearly stated that this army was created by using the stone mask on people. They even used a stone mask on a horse for the chariot race. Also, zombies can only be created by a vampire injecting their vampiric extract into a person. The Pillarmen presumably do not have such an ability, so they aren't even capable of making zombies in the first place. I got one question asking why Kars didn't use his ankle blades again. Back in his first fight with Joseph, he uses them while chasing after the red stone. However, later on, when his foot is caught in the rope, he doesn't bring them out despite this being a perfect opportunity. This is actually something that is only a problem in the anime. In the manga, Kars actually does bring out his ankle blades to do this very thing, but Joseph attacks him before he can do anything. One person asked why Dio didn't take a different body, since it wouldn't reject him like Jonathan's body does, or lead the Joestars to his location. This question kind of misses the point of Dio as a character. Dio doesn't take Jonathan's body out of necessity, he takes it because that's what he wants. Dio could have also just lived out his life normally with the Joestars and become a pretty wealthy person, but he wanted the entire fortune and decided to kill them instead. As of part 3, Dio is an intense believer in fate, and believes that overcoming the Joestars using the body of their ancestor is a necessary step to getting the status he thinks he deserves. During Kakuin's death in part 3, he mentions that it is midnight back in Japan. Some say this makes no sense, since we saw that the Nijimura father's flesh bud mutated after Dio's death, and that happened during the day in Japan around 2 PM. However, nothing suggests that these two events happened at the exact same time. According to Kakuin, this scene takes place at around 5 PM in Egypt. However, while Dio was defeated by Jotaro shortly after, his body was not destroyed until dawn, which would be at least 12 hours later. This aligns almost perfectly with the flesh bud mutation in Japan, which had clearly already been underway for a little bit when it was discovered by Keicho. Some ask how it is possible for Josuke's grandfather to see Aqua Necklace in the bottle, since it's a stand and he isn't a stand user. These people seem to misunderstand how Aqua Necklace's ability actually works. Aqua Necklace occupies existing fluids and can change their properties. As we saw in the fight later on, he turned on all the faucets and a humidifier to gain access to the house. Perhaps the stand form itself of Aqua Necklace would be invisible to
Smartest
people,
Jojo
but the
fan,
fluid
yeah.
he's inhabiting would clearly still be visible to anyone, as seen back when Tomoko nearly drank Aqua Necklace when she thought it was normal water. I've seen some confusion when it comes to family members gaining stands through the arrow. In Part 3, it was shown that when Dio pierced Jonathan's body with the arrow, all of his direct relatives gained stands. However, some point to the fact that Koichi was pierced with the arrow, but his sister or mom did not gain a stand. The answer to this is that it isn't simply the familial relation that causes stands to awaken like this. The more important thing is a strong psychic link, something only shared between special individuals. This is the same psychic link that allows the Joestars to sense each other's presence nearby, as well as how Trish sensed Diavolo in Part 5. Koichi and his family are never shown to have a supernatural bond like this, so the arrow's power would not be transferred between them. Some have asked why Josuke didn't restore Joseph's missing hand after meeting him in Part 4. First of all, it has been shown that once something is no longer attached to a person, it eventually is no longer considered part of them. So certainly
Dude, that's
Joseph's
so
hand,
dumb.
which has been severed for 60 years, would no longer be able to be brought back by Crazy Diamond. However, even if it were possible, I don't think Joseph would be all that interested in being healed, since he seems to enjoy having a cool robot hand to begin with. After the sheer heart attack fight, Kira fled to the
I think she
Cinderella
enjoys
salon
it.
where he forced
Sorry,
Aya
okay,
to
you know what?
alter
I'm
his
sorry.
appearance. Some have asked how Kira knew about Aya and that her ability might be able to help him. However, Aya's salon was never really a secret to anyone. It's a public business that anyone can go to and witness the effects of. So just by living in Morio, Kira could have easily seen the salon and figured out what it could do as a last resort when he is caught. In fact, the anime even adds a scene of Kira watching the salon from a distance beforehand. I got one question asking why they didn't just use Kira's fingerprints to track him, since he still possesses his original fingerprints on one of his hands. I genuinely have no idea how this person thinks they'd be able to do this, unless they decide to comb over every inch of the town searching for the fingerprints that only exist on the hand of one guy in a town of 60,000 people. This person is really referring to the original Kosaku Kawajiri's fingerprints, which are on Kira's other hand and the corpse left on Aya's salon. However, as I have explained in a previous video, Kosaku's body was destroyed along with Aya by Killer Queen's explosion. One person asked how it's possible that 2 arrows have been in Morio for the past 14 years, but that they weren't being used on people during this time. First of all, I don't really see how this is an issue to begin with, but regardless, this person seems to forget that one of the arrows in question was the one that Keicho had, which he says he didn't even get until years after Dio's defeat, and once he did get it, he used it on a ton of people. As for the other arrow, it was given to Yoshihiro Kira by Enya, and he used it to awaken stands in himself and his son. Diavolo discovered the stand arrows and sold them to Enya in 1986. This is presumably the time when Yoshihiro received the arrow. Shortly after this, however, in 1987, Yoshihiro died of cancer, and lived on as the ghost in the picture frame. So he really had no reason to be going around awakening stands and random people anymore, especially after Dio's final death 2 years later. Some have asked why during the dice game, Rohan didn't just use Heaven's Door on Josuke to find out that he's cheating. This is just something that would be completely out of character for Rohan. As we saw in the Cheap Trick arc, he needs to get the satisfaction of looking at Kinako's back without just ordering him to turn around with Heaven's Door. Rohan wanted to do the same here with Josuke. I got one question asking that after Josuke and Koichi were restored, why didn't Terunosuke simply use Enigma's ability on them again, since he already knows their fears? This person seems to misunderstand how Enigma's ability actually works. A person is able to be affected by Enigma when they show their tell for being afraid. In this scene, Josuke and Koichi are clearly no longer afraid, so they would be unaffected by the ability. One of the main topics people bring up is why Rohan didn't use Heaven's Door to locate Kira. People seem to have this idea that Heaven's Door is capable of anything, but they seem to be unaware of a lot of the restrictions
remove his ability to cool him.
has. What people seem to think is possible is that Rohan could, for example, write, "I know the location of Yoshikage Kira" in someone, and that they would suddenly know this information. However, we have never seen the stand capable of doing something like this. There is no good example of Heaven's Door implanting new information into a person's mind from nowhere. What most people say to counter this is an example from Part 5, where Koichi blurts out that Rohan used Heaven's Door to make him learn Italian. However, the exact method of this was never actually explained. Most just assume that Rohan wrote in Koichi to implant the knowledge of the language into him. However, an equally likely possibility is that he wrote for him to hear any Italian as Japanese, and to have his own speech translated into Italian when he spoke. There's plenty of possibilities like this that don't have knowledge unknown to Koichi and Rohan added in by Heaven's Door. I received another question asking about the spin-off series The Spokushibe Rohan. This person asked how it's possible that Rohan revived Naoko's daughter after death, when no stand should be capable of doing this. However, this person seems to ignore the fact that Naoko's daughter isn't even a human. She's a yokai whose death is actually the next stage of its life. As we saw with Gunpei, he continued to bleed after his supposed death, and was even still capable of reproduction. So Naoko's daughter was never really dead, and Heaven's Door only reversed the effects of her ability to restore her.
Right.
Some have asked how in the Notorious B.I.G. fight, Trish was able to damage the stand with a metal pole, if stands are supposed to be unaffected by physical objects.
Oh, I've heard that one a lot.
This is probably the third time I've had to explain this concept.
I remember.
No. Stands are not, and never have been, completely immune to physical objects. If a stand is fully materialized, it can take damage from anything that can surpass its durability, including non-stand objects. The only time when physical objects would be unable to touch stands is if a stand is dematerialized. Regardless, Notorious B.I.G. doesn't even apply to this argument, since it is a physical stand that grew from Karne's fingers. One question I've seen relates to an early scene in Part 7. They ask what the holes in the wall that Sandman saw are supposed to be. I've seen this question a couple times actually. One person has even tried to say that these are related to the wall eyes from Part 8. This is obviously not the case, however, and the nature of these holes is clearly explained in the scene itself. Sandman points out that the holes are perfect spheres. Next, he points to the footprints and handprints on the ground and says that someone was training here while holding a round metal object in their hand. As if it weren't obvious enough, Sandman is talking about Gyro Zeppeli with his steel ball weapons, which were introduced later in the very same chapter. During the In a Silent Way fight in Part 7, Johnny briefly sees Norisuke on the coastline and believes that he is the stand user, only for it later to be revealed to be Sandman. One person asks why Norisuke was hiding in the bushes here, and says that this was never explained. I really just have no idea what this person is talking about, since Norisuke isn't even hiding or anything, he's literally just sitting there by the water and even tries to ask Johnny what's wrong before he's attacked. So he was never really acting suspicious to begin with. And that's all the new Araki Forgot topics for now. With how many extras videos
there's still a few that we have not reacted to, so if you guys want it,
however, I also
please let yourself be known in the comments. If enough people ask for it, I'll do more.
The Jojo are not necessarily misinformation or
what's happening? There's more?
in the community that need addressing.
I don't care. I don't care.